The country in utter chaos under Joe Biden's leadership, and the president does not want to answer any of the tough questions.
May God protect our troops. Thank you all so very much.
Can you tell parents that going to lower gasoline prices?
You can talk about worker safety, of course. Thank you very much.
What do you say, America? Mr. President, how are you going to see images of the children in the border facilities? Are you going to visit the border, Mr. President?
Thank you very much.
Ready for the press conference tomorrow, sir.
The press conference.
Can you order equal pay for the soccer team, sir?
The White House getting called out for putting Biden in the Presidential Witness Protection Program. And things are getting so bad that even the left-wing Associated Press is knocking Biden for falling short on transparency and avoiding important questions. In fact, Biden's done fewer news conferences and interviews than the last 5 presidents, and it's not even close. Biden has only held 9 news conferences since taking office, compared to Trump's 22 and Obama's 27. He is outpacing the others with 200 informal Q&As when he's relentlessly hounded by the media. But the White House says Biden's always eager to talk.
He takes questions multiple times a week. His schedule has been quite packed, but he would like to do it. Hopefully, we will be able to add some local interviews in the next couple of weeks. The president's taken your questions? This president has done 140, I don't even know, maybe 150 by now, short Q&As where he takes questions from the press typically a couple times a week. It's just not accurate to suggest that he isn't accessible or doesn't answer questions.
All right, so Dana, I don't like the way they fudge these numbers on the count, these informal Q&As. This is what they count as an informal Q&A. He leaves Marine One. He stops by, someone goes, how's Build Back Better going? He says, it's going well. And then he walks away. And that's counted as one informal Q&A. So if you take that out of there, he's barely talking to the press at all.
Well, if I could just start by saying we are going to celebrate your news at the end of the show, so everyone stick around. We are thrilled for you, and we're going to have a chance to talk about it. Mr. Prime Time. So hell hath no fury like a D.C. media scorned, but they're right to be. I mean, remember, this is the campaign, the Biden campaign, promised a return to normal. And I have a feeling that a lot of people in the press corps don't think this is very normal, especially if you just look at those numbers. Counting informal Q&As really does feel like a cop-out. However, there's a little bit of cost-benefit analysis or risk assessment that seems to be going on in the White House, which is it better to put him out there to take questions or not? Is it better to have stories like this lead the 5 that says he's not taking enough questions rather than have him take questions and cause perhaps additional problems? There's a calculation that you have to make, which is, why would we put the president out today? What message are we trying to deliver? Can he seal the deal? Can he advance the legislative agenda? Can he move Joe Manchin by doing an interview in West Virginia, et cetera? And to me, I think that their answer is they ask all those questions, they do all those calculations, and they decide they'd much rather start off the 5 with this story rather than something else.
But Katie, doesn't he have to create a story arc for his presidency? He has to do that himself rhetorically. No one's going to do it for him. And he's the most powerful man in the world. He's got to tell us what his presidency is all about.
Well, he has trouble defending his presidency. He has trouble defending the fact that Democrats are at odds with his agenda, including moderate Democrats, when he ran as a moderate. And he has a very difficult time justifying what he's been trying to push through Congress or what he's done, with executive orders through the press. And it's interesting, throughout his presidency for the last year, which is not typical, Jen Psaki, the press secretary, often briefs on the same day that Joe Biden gives a big speech or does a press conference, which is strange. You usually would allow the president's words to stand for themselves, but she's always on standby to clean up or to answer further questions or to clarify maybe what the president meant if he stumbles and doesn't say something that's quite accurate, which he has done a number of times. Dana is absolutely right. This is all about risk and cost benefit to him going out there and saying something that Jen Psaki then has to clean up for an entire week. We saw this last summer when the infrastructure bill and this big spending bill were being debated for the first time, and Joe Biden said he wasn't going to sign either one of them unless they came together, even though he had just negotiated with Republicans that they would be separate bills, and they spent an entire week trying to clean that up and paragraphs of a statement. But when it comes to the press here, I don't know what they expected. This is what Joe Biden did on the campaign trail. He was in his basement. He never took questions. President Trump held press conferences for hours on end, so long that they ran out of questions, and yet they spent all of their energy attacking him instead of being grateful for the access.
Yeah, Greg, they help elect the guy, and then they complain that the guy they helped elect isn't talking to him enough.
Well, that's part of that's part of their game, right? They have to look like they are perturbed when they really aren't. Remember how much stuff we learned under Trump, whether we liked it or not? Because he did everything in front of you. He was like those loud parents where all the kids get to hear all the fights, and he was doing it in real time. And it wasn't just the press interviews. Every day he was pulling back the curtain by not just the press asking him questions, but he was asking everybody else questions. Yeah. So he literally was figuratively pulling back the curtain while Joe has the blinds drawn and the curtains are closed, and the White House ends up as transparent as like frosted mud. Now, because it's Monday and I want to do an analogy, and it has been a long time since I've done an analogy. If the presidency were a car, Donald Trump would have been like a convertible, doorless dune buggy. You know, you could see it all as it's going up and down the dunes, just like the banana splits, right? But Joe Biden, he's like a black SUV with illegal tinted windows. You can't see in, but they can see out. But the whole key is you're not supposed to know who's actually driving that SUV. Every day we knew who was driving that dune buggy. It was the crazy man with the orange hair. But we don't know what's going on. We don't know who's in control, and they want to keep it that way. Meanwhile, Joe's like the last customer at a diner. You know, he's oblivious to everybody waiting around wanting to leave. You know, there's inflation, there's crime, there's school lockdowns, and he's just having the best time because he's completely unaffected by these problems. He's in his 9th decade. You know, he's just happy to have the soup.
Yeah, he's like, I'll have another cup of coffee.
Yes.
Let's go. All right, Harold, who is driving the tinted-out SUV?
Well, first off, congrats, man.
Thank you.
That's a heck of a metaphor that Greg used.
Thank you.
With the cars there. I do know that every president tries to manage his coverage. Dana knows as well, better than anybody on this panel. Some have been more successful than others. W had success. Reagan had success with Deaver and Baker. And I think as you think about Biden, I think one of the things that he's having the biggest challenge with, I think you and Katie nailed it when you said that others are defining his presidency. He's letting others deliver the message and deliver the message around his message. The presidency is really about developing, to your point, Jesse, a narrative, a compelling one, a constant one, changing and adjusting as some of the circumstances and some of the press may change or facts may change around things, but you have to have a compelling vision for why you want to be president, and your presidency should be organized around it. Otherwise, people will define it for you. Take Build Back Better. All Build Back Better was a big heap of money in the minds of people who were really opposed to it. People really didn't understand what was in it. Those who were against it defined it as a big grab for climate change, when in fact there are other things there when you poll separately or individually that measure up and measure well with the country. So I think they should learn from this, understand he has 215 or whatever that number was, 216 informal Q&As, spend a little more time trying to define the presidency, define that narrative, and allow the president's values and motives to come out as he's explaining and as he's defending and trying to gather support within his own party and obviously with independents and Republicans alike.
Yeah, I think initially the narrative was that he was going to beat the virus, and then he failed. So what are we talking about here? Looks like Jen Psaki's the one driving the tinted-out SUV.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.